I think we're having the last winter days here in the heart of Europe. The weather is getting warmer, and while I do love the thought of spring coming, this in-between season can be a bit tricky when it comes to cooking. Even the typical autumn produce isn't that great anymore. Apples are all wrinkly, squash is past its best times, and I sometimes just find myself staring at my fridge or pantry thinking, what am I even supposed to cook? I know I'm not the only one who gets a little uninspired this time of year. Without fresh ingredients to build meals around, and there's not a lot of that in the winter, it's easy to feel stuck. But honestly, this is when pantry staples really come into play, and I find myself surprised every time how much I can do just with a few of them. So today I'm making a few really mundane, everyday things, nothing fancy, no special grocery trips required, just simple from scratch cooking with what I and probably you already have. So let's start with the number one staple I always want to have on hand, and that's sourdough bread. I didn't go for any fancy inclusions this time, but I did want to switch things up from my usual loaf. The idea actually came to me after making curry just the other day, and I had turmeric out on the counter, and I thought of how vibrant the color would look in something like bread. I decided to make a marbled loaf, so I halved my basic sourdough recipe. One half stayed plain with just a little bit of black pepper because I really liked the idea of this flavor combination, and I put a bit of turmeric powder into the other half. We ended up loving this bread so much that I actually turned it into a recipe on my blog, so I will link that down below if you want the printable version. But the process is really simple and not that different from just plain sourdough. You make two separate doughs and combine them into one bowl just before the second round of stretch and folds. If you want the colors more blended, you can join them earlier during the first round maybe. And if you like more distinct marbled look, you can definitely wait until the third round. But for me, combining them on the second round was that sweet spot. The second thing I'm making is pasta carbonara, and in case you're not familiar with it, it's basically spaghetti with a creamy egg sauce, some kind of cured pork and pecorino romano cheese, which is pretty similar to Parmesan cheese. Now, my version isn't 100% traditional, but it's a variation we like even better, so that's what I'm showing you here. And if you've never had carbonara before, I really encourage you to try it. It's one of those meals that's cozy and comforting, but is actually super simple to make, and it's made with just a few pantry staples. I think it tastes kind of similar to mac and cheese, but I've only had mac and cheese once in my life, so I might not be the best judge of that. Either way, if you like your pasta creamy and rich, you'll probably love this recipe. For the cured meat, I'm using pancetta because our local store sells really high quality pancetta, and that smoky flavor really adds something to the dish. But you can absolutely use any kind of bacon, for example. Just make sure whatever you use, I recommend cutting it into little pieces so they blend into the sauce easily. I fry pancetta in my cast iron skillet for it to release some of the fat and get crispy around the edges, and this takes just about as long as the pasta needs to cook, so everything comes together pretty quickly after that. And while spaghetti is the traditional choice for carbonara, I usually end up using different kind of pasta because it's easier for my little boys to eat. Here I'm using small shell pasta and I'm cooking about 250 grams of it because that's the amount I know works well with 250 grams of pancetta. So for me, a good rule of thumb is equal amounts of pasta and meat, but it's the balance we like and you can definitely adjust it to your taste if you want. I'm also preparing to add about 4 eggs to that, which comes to about 1 egg per 50 grams of pasta and meat. I had slightly larger eggs this time, so I went with 4, but if your eggs are smaller, you could easily use 5 instead. Then I'm simply cracking the eggs into a small bowl, seasoning them with salt and pepper, and whisking them together with a fork. And just as I finish prepping the pancetta and eggs, my pasta is done, so I'm draining it and tossing it straight into the pan with the pancetta. Now, this part is crucial. We're basically making a sauce with these eggs, so we want them to cook, but not curdle. So to make sure that happens, I turn off the heat on my cast iron skillet before pouring the eggs over the pasta while the pasta is still steaming hot. Then I start mixing together everything so eggs turn into this creamy sauce. And don't panic if it looks a little soupy at first. The heat from the cast iron pan and the pasta will keep cooking the eggs gently, and within a minute or two they'll thicken up perfectly. You also saw me pour in a splash of heavy cream. That's completely optional. It's not in the traditional version, but we really like a little bit of cream in it. And then we usually serve it with some Parmesan cheese or with nutritional yeast sprinkled on top, and it's a meal that everyone likes, and it's the ultimate comfort food for me. The recipe is a simple one, but I'll still leave it in the description box down below just in case you want to try it, so you have everything written out. And to finish off with something sweet, I'm making banana bread, one of the easiest, most forgiving things you can bake with pantry staples. I almost always add some sourdough discard if I have any to use up. I don't follow a special sourdough discard banana bread recipe. I just take a regular banana bread recipe and add about 50 grams of discard as an extra ingredient. I've never had any issues doing it this way, and it's such an easy way to use up extra discard without changing the texture or flavor too much. But this trick isn't just for banana bread. I use discard in all kinds of baked goods, and the ones that really work well are pancakes, Dutch babies, waffles, Kaiserschmarren, basically anything with a batter. If you have a favorite recipe for any of those, just try adding some discard. Start with 50 grams, and once you see how it works, you can slowly increase it and see how much you can get away with. At least that's my strategy. I hope you enjoyed coming along with me to cook some simple meals from pantry staples today, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more videos about sourdough baking, food from scratch and natural living. I upload new videos every Friday, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!